After successfully turning gossip into glory, Adana faces a crucial choice: a life of luxury among the elite or the safety of her original plan. When Adana walked into the studio that night, she saw Chijioke sleeping at the machine, with bits of unfinished work scattered around him like lost feathers. The apprentices had gone home for the night, and the only sounds were the ticking of the old clock and distant noise of the city. She sat down next to him, careful not to wake him. Adana looked at his face, the lines of worry etched into his forehead and the small scar on his chin from fixing her mother's old table. He looked so small and so precious in that moment. When he woke up, his eyes met hers, directly, no small talk or false smiles needed. Without holding back, she whispered, "I met Obina. He offered me more money. He promised me everything." She braced for anger, worried he might slam a door again. But Chijioke just let out a long sigh, sounding both heartbroken and relieved. "Did you say yes?" he asked. "No," she replied. He closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them again, they were tired but warm. He took her hand, his rough fingers softly tracing her palm. "Then don't ever let him make you forget who helped you chase your dreams," he said gently. Adana rested her forehead against his shoulder, and in that silence, they both felt so much more than words could say. Obina wasn't the type to give up easily. He sent flowers, texts, and even hired a billboard in Surulere showcasing one of Adana's designs with Obina Hotels Present at the bottom without her permission. When she saw it, her throat tightened. She stood in the street, staring at her work turned into someone else's trophy. Chijioke stood next to her, fist clenched in anger. That night, she called Obina. Her voice was steady as she said, "Take it down." He laughed at the other end, like she was just a child refusing candy. "You can't stop me, Adana," he said playfully. "You can either stand next to me or stay beneath me like the others." The next morning, she hired a lawyer with the money she had saved for new machines. It nearly broke her heart, but she knew if she let Obina take her work now, she would lose everything later. The billboard was taken down within a week, replaced by an apology she knew he didn't mean. But as she watched workers remove her face from the city skyline, she felt something click inside her. No matter what Lagos threw her way, she promised to always own herself. News spread fast that Adana had stood up to Obina and succeeded. Some people praised her, while others whispered that she was arrogant and didn't know how to respect powerful men. Among all the chatter, another familiar face returned: Madame Felicia, the older designer who had once sabotaged her studio. Sensing weakness, Felicia spread rumors that Adana's designs were stolen, that she copied from foreign catalogs and cheated clients with cheap fabric. At first, the gossip was just noise in the background, but when two big clients cancelled their fittings, Adana realized Felicia's words were working. Chijioke told her to ignore it. "Our work speaks for itself," he said fiercely, but Adana knew Lagos often cared more for scandal than for the truth. One night, she sat up making a plan, not for revenge, but to prove herself. She would show the city what she really was: original, bold, and impossible to copy. The plan was simple but risky. Host a runway show in a rundown community hall. No big sponsors, just pure talent and word of mouth. They spent every bit of money on fabric, lighting, and chairs. Friends and loyal clients volunteered as models. Aunties made puff-puff and poured cheap malt drinks for guests. Posters went up overnight. Threaded promise designs, one night only. Felicia laughed when she heard about it. "She'll just embarrass herself," she sneered to her circle. But Adana decided to ignore the sneakers. On the night of the show, the power went out just 15 minutes before her first model was supposed to walk. Adana felt a moment of panic, but then Chijioke quickly grabbed a box of candles from the storage room and lined the runway with their flickering flames. When the first model stepped out, her satin gown glowing in the candlelight, Ankara details shimmering like fire, the crowd gasped. Phones lit up, aunties cheered, and just like that, a blackout turned into something special. By the final bow, Adana felt proud. Her story wasn't just gossip anymore. It was alive in silk and light for everyone to see. Orders came pouring in after the show. The apprentices worked late hours and the studio became a busy maze of fabric rolls and invoices. Adana was so busy she barely got any sleep, and so was Chijioke. But with success came new problems. Some clients paid late and others asked for more than they initially promised. The apprentices fought over hours and pay. One time, a half-finished gown vanished overnight and returned days later ruined. Adana realized she couldn't just be a designer anymore. She had to be a boss, a leader, someone who could say no and mean it. She started holding early morning meetings. She set clear rules about using fabric, working hours, and payment. Some workers complained and left. She let them go. Slow and steady growth was better than broken trust. At night, she and Chijioke sat in their small back office, sketching new ideas. In those sketches, they dreamed of training more young girls, opening a second shop, and maybe one day exporting abroad. They were no longer just looking for a bride price. They were building a legacy. One sticky evening, while pinning a hem, Adana heard her father's voice at the doorway. He came alone, hat in hand, with a softer look in his eyes than she had ever seen. Behind him, curious neighbors peeked in. "I want to see where my daughter's name comes from," he said simply. She gave him a tour, showing him the crowded work tables, the apprentices sewing in a corner, and the mood board filled with sketches. He nodded at everything, staying quiet. When they reached her tiny back office, he cleared his throat. "You did well," he said. The words felt stiff and rusty, but they meant everything to her. Before he left, he pressed a small envelope into her palm, a list of names. "Your uncles want to help finish the bride prize," he said. "It's not charity, it's pride." Adana hugged him, tears staining the chalk dust on her cheek. She understood that sometimes pride and love can be made from the same cloth. You just have to know how to stitch them together. The ceremony was small but meaningful. Elders gathered in her family's compound, exchanging kola nuts and blessing. Chijioke's family sat across from hers, no longer outcasts but equals again. When they counted the final items, goats, wrappers, a small stack of crisp naira, Adana felt a weight lift from her chest. She had done it. They had done it. Chijioke caught her eye across the courtyard, his grin wide, his eyes glistening with tears. When their hands brushed during the final blessing, she sensed their silent promise. This was just the beginning. Later that night, as family danced and enjoyed pepper soup and palm wine, Adana slipped away to her old childhood room. She touched her sewing kit, now worn and faded, and whispered a prayer of thanks. She had sewn her worth. No one could take that away from her. Their wedding wasn't like the fancy society event Obina had suggested. It was simple, warm, filled with laughter and colors from home. Adana's dress was her own design. White satin with deep green Ankara cuffs and a gele that served as a veil. Chijioke wore a tailored agbada they had stitched together during late nights when they could. Friends and neighbors filled the family compound, drumming and dancing under the Lagos sun. Aunties pressed crisp naira notes into the folds of her gele. Children scrambled for leftover jollof and cold malt. When the pastor called them husband and wife, Adana squeezed Chijoke's hand tight. He winced but didn't let go. Later, in the quiet of their tiny studio turned honeymoon room, they lay tangled in leftover fabric scraps and dreams, whispering about what could come next. Not an ending, but the start of something bigger than both of them. There was no fancy getaway, no plane tickets, no luxury hotel. Instead, they took 2 days off to sleep, eat, and laugh like kids. On the third day, they were back at the sewing machine. New brides waited and old clients returned. Lagos didn't stop just because two dreamers said I do. They didn't mind. Each fitting felt sweeter, each new dress another reminder that love stitched with hard work and trust could outlast gossip and greed. When people asked why they didn't travel for their honeymoon, Adana just smiled. We did, she said. We traveled here together. In their small shop under the hum of an old machine, Adana and Chijoke discovered paradise wasn't a place, it was a promise. As more orders came in, they decided to train more girls. Girls like Adana who once were hungry, unnoticed, and full of little sparks. They started a free apprenticeship program, teaching how to stitch, cut, and care for clients. It wasn't easy. Some girls arrived late, others broke needles faster than they could fix them. But anytime one of them grinned over a perfect hemline, Adana's heart swelled. She wasn't just making dresses anymore. She was sowing hope into other people's futures. One evening, she saw Chijoke at the doorway, watching her teach the apprentices. When she asked what he was looking at, he just smiled. You, he said simply. And the next use. Word about Adana's free apprenticeship spread quickly. Soon, the little shop was packed with students, rolls of fabric, and piles of unfinished work. Brides waited in line for fittings. Children napped on benches while their mothers pinned hems. It was beautiful chaos, but it was also too small. One evening, after tripping over another box of sequins, Chijoke looked at her and said, "It's time." They found a bigger place, an old warehouse near a busy market. The walls were cracked, the roof leaked, but the floor was wide and open, filled with promise. They spent weeks cleaning it out. Apprentices painted the walls bright yellow, old uncles fixed the roof, neighbors brought the leftover tiles and old furniture. It wasn't fancy, but when they opened the doors, it felt like a dream much bigger than their old studio. On the first day, Adana stood in the middle of the big room, arms open wide. She breathed in the smell of fresh paint and fabric dust and thought, this is what we built with our own hands, ours. The bigger space brought bigger problems too. Rent doubled. The new market neighborhood had more gossip and envy. Some days, the power went out for hours, forcing them to stitch by candlelight. One time, a bolt of expensive lace was stolen. Another time, a jealous rival sent thugs to smash their windows at night. Chijoke chased them off, out of breath and shaking with anger. They learned quickly that success wasn't just about skill, it was about survival. They added locks to the doors and paid for extra security. Some nights, they slept on 4 mattresses in the shop just to protect what they'd worked so hard to build. But every morning brought new brides, fresh designs, and laughter echoing off the bright yellow walls. Lagos could be tough, but it could also be kind to those determined enough to keep going. One evening, an old friend, Bissy, her first big bride, came back with news. She had moved to Abuja, where brides waited weeks for imported dresses. She offered to invest in a small branch there if Adana could send designs. The idea scared Adana. Abuja felt like a different world, with bigger clients and bigger risks. But when she told Chijoke, he squeezed her hand and said, "Let's grow. Slowly, but let's grow." They sent 2 trusted apprentices to Abuja with patterns and machines. Orders came in slowly at first, then doubled when a governor's daughter wore Adana's gown for an engagement party. Adana spent late nights on the phone, guiding fittings she couldn't physically help with, checking details through blurry video calls. She missed the Lagos dust under her feet, but she knew every new stitch in Abuja was another root planted deep. One late afternoon, as Adana finished packing dresses for a pickup, she looked up to see Obina standing in her new studio doorway. He looked the same. Crisp shirt, smug smile, voice too soft to trust. Adana, he said, ignoring Chijoke, who was tightening a machine screw nearby. You've done well, but I hear Abuja is costly. I can help. Adana felt her spine stiffen. She remembered that rooftop dinner, the stolen billboard, and the quiet threats. She forced a polite smile. Thank you, Obina, but we are fine. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. Everyone needs insurance. I can still make you shine brighter than any husband can. Chijoke's rent dropped to the floor. He stepped forward, but Adana raised her hand to stop him. She turned to Obina, her voice clear enough for everyone in the studio to hear. I am not yours to polish or protect. This business, this marriage, it's already shining. Obina's smile faded. He left without saying another word. Outside, Lagos swallowed him up. Months went by, orders piled up. Abuja was thriving. The new shop was busy day and night. Then one hot morning, Adana fainted. When she woke up, Chijoke was beside her, clearly worried. A test showed the news. They were going to have a baby. Joy and worry mixed inside her like tangled threads. How could she manage 2 shops, teach her workers, face the storms from Lagos, and have a baby too? But Chijoke just kissed her forehead and said, We'll handle this dream, Ada, one step at a time. They shared the news with the apprentices over soft drinks and puff-puff. The word spread through the neighborhood like tasty gossip, but this time it was all sweet. Can Chijoke and Adana balance their growing business and the baby on the way? What do you think? Will this baby be their biggest blessing or their toughest challenge yet? Drop your predictions in the comments. Let's talk about it. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You won't want to miss the ending of the bride price hustle. Until next time, dream big and stay curious. It's all love from this side.